All right, now, the Nigeria Deposit Insurance Corporation has said that it has obtained winding up orders for 96 out of 183 microfinance and primary mortgage banks whose licenses were revoked by the Central Bank of Nigeria in May 2023. The managing director of NDIC, Mr. Bello Hassan, expressed the corporation's commitment to fulfill its mandate of protecting depositors through bank supervision, failure resolution and liquidation so as to boost confidence in the financial sector. Meanwhile, it seems the microfinance banks are also gearing up to become more impactful in funding small businesses. They had their recapitalization in 2022, so they are not captured in the present one, but they are watching that space as deposit banks take their turn. Well, I had a chat with the chairman of Baobab Microfinance Bank, Mr. Rotimi Oyikomi, on this, talking about recapitalization, how to be more impactful in the small business space.
Well, we're not involved yet. We're expecting that we would also be called. And what we have done as Baobab is we've looked at what the minimum requirement was. We've looked at what it was at that time in dollar terms. And we've looked, because we think that that's what the central bank has done. They're trying to make sure that the banks are strong enough for the business that they're carrying. And so what we have done is we've done very similar thing. We today we actually exceed the minimum requirement today, but we know that this is coming. And so what we've done is to try to understand what it would be, whether we would need additional capital or we will not need additional capital. If we need, we're ready for it. And so if they come to us today to provide a plan, we believe we can provide a plan tomorrow because we have preempted what will happen and we're being proactive, being ready for that.
Well, from what you have described, it sounds like if we really want to boost production in the country, the first step or what we should do at this time, intervention should be in knowledge sharing and skills acquisition. And I don't know, do you see the government doing something in that area?
Let me tell you my personal view. I think we actually overrate funding as a requirement for SMEs. And the reason I think we overrate them is because there are more important challenges that face SMEs than, capital or even funding, right? One is knowledge of the industry where they're in. People go into industries without even understanding the industry itself. I've involved in businesses where you look at their conversion rate, and their conversion rate, to be frank, is so suboptimal that we can't compete, right? So we then find, and that's why you find a few of these development agencies are seeing how you can support SMEs by giving them information. Because if you don't have information on the yield in the industry where you are in, or the technology that can make you efficient, so you can have the money, right? Even if interest rates are low, you might find that you are not producing in a way that you can be competitive. And so one of the things that we have tried to do is, apart from providing the funding, right, because you have to provide funding at market price. If you say you want to give me a deposit, you won't take a suboptimal rate because I want to give money to people at suboptimal rate. And also I have to be competitive. I also have to have a sustainable business, because if I give money at a rate lower than how much I'm getting it, I'm in trouble. So what we think is that there is issue around infrastructure, there's issue around knowledge. I am convinced that number one actually is knowledge. If you have information on the industry where you operate, and you can operate efficiently, right, you'll be surprised how, and I'm not saying, by the way, I'm not saying interest rate is low. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that because that's what everybody has to cope with, right? However, where you have a difference is whether you can produce at an efficient level than others. I mean, you can take simple examples. Where do you plant potato? What do you call it? Tomato, right? How do you get tomato to the market? Right? If you can't transport it, if you can't store it, So I'm saying the challenges are such that we need to look at the value chain and try to understand where the bottlenecks are. Because if we deal with the bottlenecks, you'll be surprised how a lot of what is produced doesn't even get to the market. And so when people say things are expensive in the market, why? It's because a lot of it is damaged or rotten, closer to the gate of where it's being produced. Then you get into how do we transport? The roads are bad. Guess what? Our train moves people, not cargo. Everywhere in the world, train moves cargo, not people. I mean, I'm not saying they don't move people, but they move mostly cargo. So the question is, how do we get our infrastructure where we can say that our train, when I was growing up, it's train from Lagos to Kano. Moves people, moves cargo, which means that you can have granite in Kano. It gets to Lagos tomorrow. Today, how do you get it? By road. The roads are bad. And why are the roads bad? Because the kind of haulage that goes on the roads are supposed to be for cars. The kinds of haulage that goes on those roads. So I'm saying there are challenges. By the way, the challenges can be overcome. It's just we just need to focus, and look at what's the area of priority. So if we do a value chain and try to understand how things go, then you can start saying, okay, what should we fix first? Is it storage? Is it real? Some of them are not things you switch. They're things that take some time. So we have to think a lot about it. And then again, we can't do it for everything. So we have to also say the products that we think that we be competitive about, and those are the ones that we need to work on.
So in your dealing with these small businesses, what sectors or types of businesses would you say will make good business or good investment at this time in the country?
I'll probably surprise you when I say this. There's no industry that you don't have good businesses and good investments. None. At one time, I remember a long time ago, people were saying that, commercial banks are better than merchant banks, right? Funny enough, at that time, when banks failed, equal number of commercial banks and merchant banks failed. So it's not about industry. It's about you. It's about this business. How is this business operating? Is it operating at a level that it understands what's happening globally? Can it compete globally or can it not compete globally? Part of it is technology. Part of it is also the people themselves. Are we producing at a quality level that makes us competitive? Do we understand the yields? What are the average yields globally? Are we attaining those yields? I can give you some examples. You go into a farm that does cassava, ask them the yield. And I'm not kidding, when you go around, most of the cassava farmers do not know the yield that they are operating. So if you don't know your yield, then how can you compete? So when you produce starch, how do you know that your starch is competitive? Because the yield, you don't even know your yield. So I'm saying you have those sort of things, and that's where you have to have, when you bring people together, I say, let's train them, let them understand, for example, cassava manufacturers, or cassava farmers, let them understand, what the yield can be and what it should be, so that people start looking at how they improve. And by the way, I'm not saying it's easy, but I've seen it. I've seen where people produce and they don't even know the yield. I've seen where people produce and they know the yield, and the yield is way below what's happening internationally. You can get into palm kernel, you can get into palm oil, you can get into starch. I'm saying you just have to start producing, and you realize that the challenge that we have, I'm not saying interest rate is not. Knowledge, technique is a major part of what we need.